It's November 2nd, 2021, and today, GoPro released firmware version 1.16 for the GoPro Hero 10. This firmware has some exciting new performance modes, including modes that adjust the temperature on the camera, as well as the battery life. You have a lot more flexibility to customize both of those now. In addition, GoPro also states this firmware update will improve performance with stabilization when moving slowly. Let's dive in and take a look. All right, first of all, let's go through how to update the firmware on your GoPro Hero 10. First thing you want to do here is you want to bring up the Quick app. Once you've opened the Quick app, you want to make sure your GoPro is connected. Once it's connected, by default, it's going to let you know that firmware version 1.16 is now available for your Hero 10. It's going to list the new features, the performance improvements, as well as the usability improvements. Once you agree, it's going to connect to the camera, and it's also going to ask you to join the camera's Wi-Fi network so that it can pull the firmware update and install it on the camera. Once it's connected, it's going to do the transferring files to camera message. That's generally going to go pretty quickly. Once the transferring is done, it's going to go through the installing update process. Now it's going to tell you here, don't go anywhere, do not exit the GoPro app, and do not turn off your camera during this process. We're going to fast forward to the end of this update installing. I did find that this firmware update did take a little longer to install than ones in the past. And I think that's probably because there's so much packed into this update. You know, it's putting modes on there where you can customize the thermals and the battery life. I have to believe that's probably a pretty big software upgrade to install. And I did find my camera restarted, I believe, 2 times. And one of the times it did linger there on that gray screen for about 10 seconds. So don't be alarmed, that is normal. And definitely don't power off or reboot your camera. Do let it finish its thing, because powering it off in the middle of a firmware update can potentially be catastrophic for your camera. With newer electronics, generally there's a revert option, but it's best not to take any chances. Now that the update's finished installing, let's take a look at those new modes on the camera. When you power it on, it's probably going to look pretty normal, but what you want to do is you want to swipe down. When you swipe down, you're going to notice that brand new mode on the lower left with the lightning bolt symbol, and it's going to be yellow in color. When you click on this, you're going to see 3 options there, and it's going to be headlined video performance modes. So the first mode in the default is maximum video performance. And this is going to be the default, and it's going to essentially offer you what the camera currently offers before the firmware update. It's going to let you have full control and all the maximum resolutions and frame rates. But the 2 new options, if you scroll down, the middle option here is going to be called extended battery. And what extended battery will do is this is going to limit your video resolutions and frame rates that extend battery life. So if we click out of this and go back to the normal menu, it's going to tell you right up here that you're in extended battery mode, and all the modes are going to say EB after them. This is how you're going to know that you're in extended battery. And if you drill down into here, it's going to have it next to all of your presets here. And if you go into these, it's going to actually limit which modes you're able to use. So for extended battery, for 5.3K, you're not able to use 60 frames per second. And that's because 60 frames does drain the battery at 5.3K a lot faster than 30 frames will. And the same thing if you go to 4K here, you're going to see that 60, 30, and 24 are available in 4K. That super high frame rate 4K 120 mode is not going to be available when you're in the extended battery life. All right, let's get back out of this here. So let's go back to that menu again, and I'm going to show you the next option. So the third option here, so this is going to be for tripod and stationary video. Now, if you remember when I talked about the overheating issues with the GoPro, this is addressing those right here. So this is going to optimize for stationary video without airflow, which is going to allow it to cool the camera. So what it's going to do for you though, is it's also going to turn off hypersmooth and GPS. Those create additional heat and are unnecessary to be on in this mode. You don't need hypersmooth if your camera's not moving. So if you go back and look at the modes now, it's going to say tripod stationary video mode enabled, and each one is going to say tripod next to it. And the interesting thing here is for that, it's going to show you the 4K tripod mode and the 5.3K mode. And if you drill down into these, you'll notice the options are quite limited. In the 4K mode, you can do 120, 60, or 30, which is great. The 4K 120 stationary without overheating is quite an accomplishment. And if we go here to 5.3K, it's going to let you do the full 60 frames as well as the full 30 frames. So basically, you can get the top resolution and frame rate that the GoPro Hero 10 offers in this mode. However, with the hyper smooth off and the GPS off, that should be enough to offset the overheating issues. So props to GoPro for this innovative firmware. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put this back into performance mode, because I want that maximum video performance, and as I said in my overheating video, I don't tend to use the GoPro in a stationary mode. If I do find I want to save a little bit of battery life, then I probably would go down to this one here, and that's going to limit my resolutions by default, so I don't have to keep in mind which ones use more battery life and which ones don't. Also, one other thing that this firmware update offered, if you click here on the video modes, you will notice that there's two additional ones. So one of them is the Ultra Slo-Mo and the other is Basic. So these are for your presets. I've already configured these. I believe the default for Ultra Slo-Mo is 2.7K 240, but I went through here and did my best settings for this. So I got those all set up. Basically, this is set the same as the 4K 120 for me, because I'm going to use it for the same purpose, so there's nothing different from that. If you haven't seen my best settings video, I've linked to that above. You can check it out. And then with this bottom mode down here, Basic, I believe the firmware defaults are 1080p, and I don't recall which frame rate, but for that one, I set it to 5K 4:3. And the reason I did that is I did not already have a mode that had the 4:3 with 5K. And there are certain instances where that 4:3 could be nice when editing in post. And then my best settings here are the same as in my best settings video. If you haven't checked that out, definitely check it out. All in all, that is a great firmware update. I definitely appreciate it, GoPro. GoPro is doing a great job listening to their consumers. And speaking of battery life, if you haven't heard yet, GoPro is releasing a brand new battery later on in November. It's going to be called the Enduro. This battery is specifically designed to give better GoPro performance in colder weather. So if you've used a GoPro in really cold weather before, like I have, that battery drains incredibly quickly. This is not unique to GoPro, by the way. Lithium-ion batteries tend to lose their power pretty quickly in cold weather. You probably notice that in your cell phone and various other electronics. The cold air just drains them. This Enduro battery is going to allow you to have a significant amount more. GoPro has provided various figures for how much longer this will last. I believe they are in the range of 30 to 40% longer battery life, which is great. Props to GoPro for that. In addition, the Enduro battery will also provide better battery life in normal operating conditions. So that's great. One of the initial complaints a lot of people had with the Hero 10 is it does use that battery charge rather quickly. I mean, when you've got 5.3K footage at 60 frames per second or 4K at 120, that's a lot going on in that camera. It is going to eat up the battery quickly. So I'm excited about this Enduro battery. I'm going to be buying a bunch of them. I've got 5 or 6 normal batteries right now for my GoPro, and I'm probably going to be buying that same amount in the Enduro batteries. The great news is GoPro has priced those at $24.99, but if you are a GoPro subscriber, I believe they will end up being $19.99, which is great because that's what the normal battery costs right now. So I'm really excited about that GoPro. Thank you for listening to your consumers, and keep up the great work. If you found this video to be helpful, please slam the like button. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd love to have you on board. Please hit that subscribe and bell notification button, and you'll be notified every time I publish a new video. Until we talk again, enjoy the latest and greatest firmware on your GoPro Hero 10.